This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast brought to you by Prize Picks. Coming at you Monday morning. It's April 22nd. We're on another off day here for the Wolves. Game 2 isn't until Tuesday night. So we got some time to look back at Game 1. Also, kind of maybe get into what we're looking for in Game 2. To do that, I'm joined by Wolves beat writer Jace Frederick from the St. Paul Pioneer Press. What's up, Jace?
Hey man, I'm enjoying having these 2 days off at home because as much as traveling for the playoffs can be fun and stuff, when you have 2 days off and that first day you're just in a hotel room, it's like, what am I doing here? There's no practice. I'm just here. It sucks. So the home court for Minnesota has been very advantageous for these 2 days right here.
And no play-in too. It's like it doesn't feel like anything gets crazy until Phoenix, going there next weekend. And then we get the bing every other day.
The 2 days off game, 2 days off. The week off game, 2 days off game, 2 days off is weird.
But nice.
It's nice. No, yeah, it's nice. It's just very much out of the regular season flow.
I'm glad I sent you that video of this. The building's getting worked on next to me here. They're literally throwing cinder blocks into a metal truck out here. I'm sorry, listeners. They've been doing it all morning. There's going to be cinder block noises in the background.
It's not that bad, at least in my head.
It's not that bad? Okay, good. So I just kind of wanted to start by talking about where Game 1 kind of moves them. I think, obviously, losing those last 2 games to Phoenix at the end of the season, it made everyone less confident that the Wolves were likely to come out of the first round. And for so much of the season, obviously being the 1 seed, you didn't think the first round was a lock, but it was kind of the assumption, right? The assumption was the Wolves would at least move, to the second round, and then there's probably big bad Denver looming out there somewhere. Like that's where we thought we would be when the playoffs came. Obviously, it's Phoenix is favored going into it, given how it all went. I think now the Wolves probably after Game 1, or they definitely have moved into being favorites in this series. But have you moved back to that point where you're like, okay, the Wolves are now in the mix again? It's maybe them and Denver in the West, or is that just like too big of a step to take in one game?
I think if you look at, it's interesting now, the Wolves are maybe just slightly more favored now than Phoenix was to start the series. That's about where the odds sit.
What is it, 60-40 Wolves?
Yeah. So the Wolves are minus 150 at this point, which would be around a 60-40 split.
Okay.
Yep. But I think just watching the way the playoffs played out the weekend here, just seeing the way the games were officiated pretty much across the board. I have friends who watch a lot of the NBA and they're like, my God, this whistle is so different. And it's true. It was a lot. And you saw that in the Wolves game too, super physical, letting a lot go, all these types of things. And you see what's rewarded in playoff basketball. The more physical team probably won every single game this weekend. And you saw a lot of blowouts too. One team's physicality was not matched by its opponents. And if that is the way it plays out, Minnesota and Denver are the 2 most physical teams in the West, and I think it's by a pretty big margin, personally. And so I think it could play out like that. If the Wolves bring that level of intensity and physicality, really playing with their peaks in those specific characteristics of their game, then they will be really hard to match by anybody but Denver. And frankly, Minnesota is probably even a little bit more physical than Denver is. So if physicality is going to be rewarded to this level, that is huge advantage Wolves. And that is, I would say that they played even more physical and intense. And maybe it's because they were allowed to on Saturday than they have even for a while. Chris Finch even alluded to that. But yeah, they bring that level of it, then it is really hard to just even see all these other teams who also have a lot of talent matching them in that department.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too, of seeing the Wolves play a game like they played on Saturday, lets you see that their best style of play can travel to the playoffs, right? And, to that end, and by no means do I think this series is over or anything, but I think you now have a confidence in this series, more likely than not, that if you do your things, you can win it. And then you do look around at the rest of the West, Denver aside, and I kind of would feel the same way about, obviously the bracket's going to go how it's going to go. But if it was Oklahoma City, kind of to your point, you would be like, I think if the Wolves, if it continues to travel, they would beat them. A Dallas, a Clippers team. I think I would feel like the Wolves should be probably favored in those spots. And then the Denver one, no. But I think that's why I would say like the Wolves are in the mix to come out of the West is simply because they have as good of a chance against Denver as anyone. They got to do what they got to do, obviously, to take care of business in this first round. But that's how I would have felt. I'm back to feeling how I would have felt kind of when the Wolves were at their best, of like maybe pre-Carl injury and things were working, January, February, something like that. Yeah, I think it did a lot for my confidence that they can go somewhere here. We needed to at least see that. Obviously, it needs to sustain. I understand this could age really.
I was going to say,
poorly.
you're going to drive some Wolves fans nuts here. Like, with
I mean it complimentary though. Like,
I know. You mean it in the best ways, but they're going to be like, oh my God, still got to get past Phoenix. Dane's here talking about like winning the West, blah, blah, blah. Like, I agree with you though. Like that, the ways in which they dominated game one are repeatable. That's easily. Like, there doesn't need to be any variance on that. There doesn't need to be any variance on how physical you are, how dominant you are on the glass. Like, sure, maybe like a few 50-50 balls went their way that will go the other way. But in general, like, that's only going to narrow a margin. It's not going to erase it. Like, the ways in which they defended physically, like, these are things that you can do every single game. And like we talk about it all season, like they would kind of pummel teams. Like, they would suffocate you. They would kind of reduce you to nothing eventually over the course of a game. And they did that to Phoenix. Like, those are the things you can do night in and night out. And there's no shooting variance, no nothing. You are very much in control of that. You can do that like as your nightly recipe.
Yeah. And that's all I'm saying. Like, they could still, as Fincher said many times, maturity could show up in a bunch of different ways. There's all that stuff. I'm just feeling more emboldened by the idea of I've seen what a good version of this Wolves team looks like in a playoff setting against a team that I was really concerned that wouldn't, travel against. Again, one game. I think Phoenix is going to have different things that they're going to be able to do and counter. You were kind of with the idea all along last week that like the Wolves got the chance to counter first in this matchup by kind of going in or adjust first by going into the series, trying to do something new. Obviously, they moved the cap matchup, a couple of other things. Whereas Phoenix was like, we won 3 times during the regular season. Like, we know how we're going to initially present here and then probably adjust off of that. So that's coming. I mean, I think like, I don't think Phoenix is dead by any means in this series. I just think the Wolves have an opportunity to, when Phoenix adjusts, however they adjust, or plays a little bit more desperate, more physical here in game 2, like if they can take that blow and punch back, like it does seem pretty realistic that the Wolves could be up 2-0, going to Phoenix, and then Phoenix has got to win 4 out of 5. Like, when you got home court and you win game 1, like it is just statistically a pretty big step in the right direction.
Yeah, and I think that's the big thing of like the desperation that they played with. Like, that is the time when it's easy to be desperate, right? Like, game 1, you're starting the playoffs, you just got crushed by this team, like twice in the last 2 weeks or whatever. Like, that is a time when like you better come out desperate. You better, like, you're defending home court, the home court that you worked all season for. It's like, now do you not relax at all? Because like that was like the Wolves at peak desperation, I would say. Like, they can play better, but that was probably about as desperate basketball as they can play. And they need to bring that again and again. And like Ant said that, Rudy said that, but it's another thing to then do it, to not relax at all. Like, I have confidence if the Wolves played in like a game 7, they would play that desperate. But can you play like that when you're up 1-0 heading into a game 2 where now your confidence is higher? You're probably like, I think we're better than this team, all these types of things. Like, that'll be a pretty big test for them. And then and if you go up 2-0 and you go to Phoenix, can you have it again for game 3? Like, that's the things that like maturity really gets challenged. Like, it's a good test for those types of things. And that's where Tuesday, like, you'll be like, oh, the Wolves can wipe this team. And then they just don't bring the exact same juice, and now all of a sudden, like, it's a close game with 2 minutes left, and you're like, what happened here?
Yeah, and so if you don't bring the juice in game 2, like, you're not in the mix in the West yet. Like, this is the steps are the steps to get there, and there needs to be the consistency to hold it. Like, I just felt like the defense in that game reminded me so much of the beginning of the season.
Yep.
Where just the pursuit was always there. But we also kind of got like 10, 12 games into the season. We're like, man, I don't know if this is going to be able to sustain at that level, just from the physicality standpoint, or how it's physically taxing. And I think that's kind of a question here too. You do have more space between games. It's not the regular season, but there is there's just a tax to pay for like multiple effort defensive basketball, right? And that really stood out to me rewatching the game. Was like, oh yeah, they played really good defense. They really had to work on defense, to play and be smart to do so. So I don't know. I mean, yeah, game 2 is going to really indicate a lot. I think it has an opportunity to, really obviously swing the series in the Wolves' direction. And I'm kind of thinking about Cat in that as the potential punch that the Wolves can throw in this game. I think a big Cat game in game 2, given how we saw at times he could be advantage offensively in this series. I think if you get that big, effective advantage basketball, maybe scores 28 whatever points in a game, I think that has an opportunity to be not a knockout blow, but like your boxer, you get hit and you're down on the mat and the ref is counting. That I think that's what the Wolves can bring more of in game 2. Is I thought Cat did a really good job within his role in game 1. Kyle and I kind of argued back and forth about like how good of a Cat game it was. I thought Cat did his job, but like, can he exceed that and kind of, elevate to being the second star in this game? I think the way Phoenix matches up with them presents the opportunity that Cat could have a big game. That's where I'm kind of looking at to start the second one. You agree with that at all?
I just don't know if that's what Minnesota wants right now. And I don't know if like in Phoenix, like you saw, I think you even highlighted this on like Twitter too and whatnot, like Phoenix with a lot of guys was bringing a second guy like in the post and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And then like even on drives, they're still going to help in on like the elbows. Like I don't think Phoenix is lined up right now where like Cat's going to get 30 points because I do think that he is getting the second most attention when he's on the court, and when it's off the court, he's getting the most attention. And I just think like the Wolves are totally fine with like, okay, he got the added attention, so let's play advantage basketball from here. I think they've had a lot of success with that. It ends up in like your Naz threes, your Nikhil threes, these types of things. So I feel like Minnesota's probably like really happy with what they got from Carl game 1. And I feel like maybe that is what they would view more as like their recipe for success versus Cat, going off or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, it was, I don't know, maybe I just got like a little hyper Cat focused in rewatching it because, I went into rewatching the game trying to understand what like Cat did and didn't do in that game, because it was really a story of 2 different halves for him, right? Like he really did kind of keep the offense afloat in the second half. How much did he
even play in the second half? Yeah.
He played the first 8.5 minutes.
Okay.
He picks up, so it's at the 3:33 mark in the third. He picks up his 4th foul, and then he sits for 10 minutes, comes back in for 1 minute. Phoenix, it's like scores, gets a stop. Finch calls a timeout, and he pulls him again. So it was 9.5 minutes in the second half. So it was just like, that was part of when I went back. I was like, was this all like the foul? What was it? And I was trying to I was taking notes. I'm like, okay, it was less decisive in the second half. There was just a little bit more, some hesitation there. Happened to be like more possessions where he got crossed onto like Beal or Booker, but that was just kind of like transition. I do think it was more about the other guys playing well and getting rolling than it was about Cat not being able to handle the Durant matchup or not be able to be an advantage on the other side.
I agree with that.
Yeah. And I think I was a little bit, when we recorded right afterwards, which is the downside of recording right afterwards, is like, I was like, oh yeah, I think Cat was getting a little bit exposed. But that wasn't true to the extent I think I thought it was true at the time. I think he just like happened to pick up that fourth foul. It was an offensive foul. So, Finch is kind of like, all right, Carl's a little frazzled here. It's 4 fouls. We're going to take him out. And that maybe delayed him bringing him back. I mean, 10 minutes to sit is a long time to sit. That doesn't happen. It was a conscientious shift of Finch being like, we're going to play what's going. And what was going then was the Naz and Nikhil and Ant. It was the flurry of the third quarter that was happening, probably in part because Cat was off the floor, but not it was mostly just like it was working. Jaden was then guarding Durant, and they started kind of slowing Durant down for the first time. So I do think it was more the rest of the guys than Cat not doing something. But it's just it's an interesting game one from Cat, because the first half he was really important. The second half he was not important. They just didn't play that much, you know. So I don't know. I think that's why I'm kind of focused on him in game two and see an opportunity. If it's like, can he play 36 minutes and make 4 or 5 threes or whatever, you know, have some sort of bigger impact in the game. I think that's possible at least.
I don't disagree that could happen. I do feel like his role in this series will be more like 28 minutes and like some bursts, some like notable bursts where it's like Cat scored 7 points in 3 minutes here. Yep. And that was huge at that point in time. He hit a 3, he got to the free throw line like he did in game one with some size advantage. Like that's what mattered. And then because like defensively, like in this series, there are like if they play Denver next series, Cat will be very critical to if they get to next series. Sorry, I want to put the cart before the horse.
We already did that right off.
Right.
So
if they and then Carl,
now.
Yeah, they'll be better defensively with Carl on the court. They do match up better with Phoenix without Carl on the court. Like that. That's just true. And you're just willing to offset some
against their starting
defense.
five.
Yep. Because like even then when Carl would go off, like they would go back to like the original matchups of like Naz was guarding Grayson Allen. They went back to that, like, oh, our power forward's back on Grayson Allen because Carl's off the court here.
That's good.
So point. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if they keep them that 28, 30 minute range. And it's just like, hey, Carl, this lineup right here where Ant's off or whatever, you just have this matchup here, or they didn't bring a double on the post. So yeah, you get this bucket. Like, and it's like little memorable stretches like you had in that second quarter where he was going to the line, like easy offense coming in that way. I feel like that's what's going to be where it's like Carl played a good in control game and he had, you know, an efficient 18 points. Like, I think that is a really good like path for him in this series.
Yeah, that's probably the right way to put it, is like he doesn't need to necessarily have a volume of success in the game. He has to have success a couple times throughout the game, like when they need it. And that is what happened in game one. You know, like they didn't need him in the second half because other guys had stepped up. They'd started getting out in transition, all those things. And they're like, well, once the offense started going without Cat because they were getting in transition, it's like, well, now we got enough offense, so we can have Naz in here to play more defense, or we can, you know, play a little bit more 4 wings, 1 big than 3 wings, 2 big. So I don't know. I mean, it's just going to be it was the topic. It was the topic of this series going into it. How was Cat going to match up? Who was he going to match up? What was he going to be able to do? And he gets a good grade in that game one. I do think there's a big Cat game that could come, whether it's game 2 or not, where he, to me, has like the opportunity to be the problem. Like one of the problems where you don't really have an answer for here, unless they completely go away from guarding Ant the way they've guarded Ant. I don't know. I don't see that happening.
There was one time where Ant made like that one off pass to Carl, and it was like Carl had a chance to shoot a 3. And then instead he like had to reset his feet though. And then all of a sudden Eric Gordon was like right on him. And like, those are the spots where I'm like, you got to be comfortable catching and firing. Like it's got to be a quicker release there. Cause those are the ones that Naz just like fires off. And it's like, and that's how Naz gets to 10 3-point attempts in 22 minutes, you know, like, and they all seem like they're natural and in the flow. So like, if Carl gets to like, you know, a big game, it's probably going to be because he's a little bit more featured, because like the off the ball, I just don't think it's still quite like firing, like as ready to catch and shoot those types of things as it needs to be for it to just come naturally within whatever they're doing.
Yeah, it was more like he almost is more apt to like fire if it's like in transition in like kind of the trail spot.
He loves the trailer 3. Yeah, that's his best catch and shoot in general. Like playing off the catch as a trailer is absolutely where he's best at it. It's just how can he learn how to do that from a standstill, I guess.
And we've seen it at different times. It's just the decision making of like, is this a pump and go situation? What's the defense doing? And that, you know, that requires like a pretty quick like decision to be made. I just think he has a good decision making game in him, and given his skill set, given the way they're guarding Ant, that to me like plus equals
Sure.
likely big Cat game that wins it.
I think they'd love to see one before like the Denver, like
right.
in this series. It's a great time to get one to get some good playoff feelings. And I don't think he left Saturday with bad playoff feelings, but
well, and your point is right too, that like Cat's going to be huge in another series, probably the next one against Denver. Like this is probably as bad of a matchup as it gets for Cat all playoffs. Anybody. I mean, even Oklahoma City, we've kind of seen that work better than what it did with Phoenix. So, we will. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's an important thing to like. If you're Finch, to keep planting in his head, is like, yeah, this might be a 28-minute a game series, but you're playing 38 against Jokic, maybe more. Like we need that as much as we can. But let's grab our first break. Today's show is brought to you by one of our new sponsors. It's Autograph. We're excited to be working with Autograph. They are in the app where your fandom lives. The app gives diehard fans like you access to the best sports content, fan challenges, and exclusive rewards like discounted tickets to the NBA playoffs. They gave away a pair of tickets to Game 1 at Target Center, exclusive merchandise, and more. And how you unlock these rewards is doing the things you already do as a fan. Basically, the Autograph app has this podcast on it. It has articles from Jace, everyone. It's all kind of in one spot, one place to follow the news on your team. It's a place to share your favorite team-specific content. So they have this, obviously, for a bunch of different teams, but they do have a Timberwolves page there. And we just want you to download the Autograph app in the App Store, Google Play Store. I use referral code DaneMoore. There's a QR code here up on the screen. If you can just, download the app, let them know you came from us using the code DaneMoore. There will be a lot of opportunities to earn different prizes and such rewards through Autograph through this playoffs. We are also brought to you by Prize Picks, and you can use prizepicks.com or the Prize Picks app and the promo code Dane for a $100 sign-up bonus. And there's a ton of stuff up for the Wolves games. I was kind of looking at, like, did anything move? They still have Ant's number at 25.5 points. Jaden McDaniels still at 9.5. This just bumped back up. Yeah, a lot of the numbers are the same as they were before. Only 18 points for Cat. I think I do.
And if you
feel like
you'll
that's
see
a little low.
Ant has like a little star behind him. That's like you get extra money or something if you hit one with an
Extra
Ant in it.
juice. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I was actually wondering what that was. There's obviously the demons and goblins things that amplify it and things there too. But so make sure if you're putting together a Prize Picks daily fantasy lineup to throw an Ant one in there.
What's KD at? That one's interesting. Just because if they guard the same way, like Durant will score more points.
Yeah, let's see here. Wow, Beal's only 17.5. Booker points. Where's Booker points here? 24.5. After what did Booker finish with in that game?
Not close to that.
Yeah, wow. Booker's at 24.5 and Durant's at 25.5. What?
That would take a Minnesota defensive schematic shift.
Do you think that's coming? Do you think we get more Jaden on Durant in this game?
I don't think so. I think it played out exactly the way we thought it would, right? Like yeah, KD can get his in like a Carl matchup, but it stagnates everything else. Like, and everybody else just kind of stands and watches. Like that was the best possible way for Minnesota to turn Phoenix into the Clippers, where it was a lot of one guy and everybody else stands and watches, and you play a lot of isolation basketball. I think it worked out exactly the way you would hope. Like even as KD's scoring a lot of points, there was no movement, there was no nothing. Nobody else was taxed at all. It was just one guy,
right dribble,
bounce. Yeah, and that was it. It was like
he was really good at it.
yeah, and it was great, but like, and everybody else had terrible games, like, and I think that's, and you'll even take your percentages anyway, because even if he hits 60%, nobody else does, like it's it plays out in big time in your favor in the end.
Yeah, no, I think that is probably the area to think about this, is you kind of know how the Wolves are going to match up. That is just surprising to me that Booker's going to probably have a better game. Jaden did a great job on him, but.
And Nikhil, I don't think Nikhil allowed himself to be screened all game when he was on Booker. Like it was just watching back. I was like, they literally. I don't even know if he ever like allowed a body to touch him. Like,
gets skinny.
He does. Yeah.
You could, anyways, if you want to put together a Prize Picks lineup, you can go to prizepicks.com or the Prize Picks app. Obviously, these are up for game 2 of the Wolves, but also plenty of games here tonight to just an opportunity to, put together a $5 lineup, gives you something else to watch during the game. PrizePicks.com, PrizePicks app, promo code Dane. Jace, I think for me watching the game back, when you're watching a game where a team loses by a lot, you're looking for things that they can do differently. And how I kind of approach it is like, what were we terrible at? Like what was clearly not working that we could take out of the equation on our end. And it's weird to me that, like, I think it's like the non-Nurkic minutes. Like, that was just
were terrible.
Yeah, and was in game 82 as well. I'm not the thing is with the non-Nurkic minutes, then it's KD at the 5, right? Basically what we're saying is don't play Drew Eubanks, don't play don't play Thad Young or whatever. But then it puts them really small. And there was a lot of possessions of, I mean, they went to that more. They still played Eubanks for like 10 minutes, but they went to that KD at the 5 look. And it wasn't really successful for them. So that's where I guess I'm kind of at from a Phoenix standpoint of like, all right, we can't have these just like dead stretches when Nurkic is off the floor. And what if Nurkic gets in foul trouble? Like that's where I'm trying to, if I'm Frank Vogel trying to get answers, I think it's KD at the 5, but I don't know. I just don't think that's the advantage that maybe some other people think it is in this series either. What do you think about that? Them going smaller look?
Like, I agree, because I just don't think like Drew Eubanks brings them anything in this series. Like, he's not physical enough, like he's like one of those lankier kind of like more athlete 5s, like,
yeah, he's good rim protector.
Yeah, right. But like not
anything else.
He can't compete like defensively. Like if put in like a post situation, he can't really compete. Like, so that it doesn't bring them a lot. So I just don't think there's any advantage there to playing him. It's like, well, we might as well at least have more skill on the court.
Yeah.
Because I don't think he's helping you on the glass. I don't think he's helping you with anything outside of rim protecting. He is good at that. So like that can be a little bit of a one final layer for like Ant to get through. Whereas when there's not a 5 on the floor, Ant attacks even more aggressively because he knows if he gets there, there's nobody stopping him. I agree with that. But man, like the Wolves have really punished small ball. And I think that kind of showed itself again. Like they just do such a great job. Like if you go small against Minnesota, you're hoping to get outrun. But Minnesota is so formidable on the offensive glass, particularly against small ball lineups, that you just don't get those opportunities. So I don't know if that is an answer. I would say like the one, I don't know, this is not even a point, but coming out of a timeout, Phoenix goes small, I think in the 4th. And like, they just had 5 guys all the way around the perimeter. Do you remember this possession? And they just started passing to each other. Like there was no movement, no driving or anything. It was just like, I was like, what are we watching right now? And eventually it swings to KD and Gobert was kind of in a help position a little bit too much. And KD got a decent look at a 3 and made it. But I was like, that looked like the stupidest play I've ever seen drawn up. You 5 all the way around the arc, just keep passing it. Right. Don't dribble, don't do anything. But like, I feel like that's kind of what you end up in, like where you want to get up and down, but once you get into the half court, you're like, where's our advantage again here? And Minnesota is so good on the offensive glass that even when they don't score against those small ball amps, which they can, oftentimes like a Rudy is there to clean it up, and all of a sudden you're starting back from square one again as the small ball team.
Yeah, that's I mean, you nailed it. It's like in the half court for them, if Phoenix is in a small ball look in the half court offensively, it's just not going to give them the advantage, just particularly with how we saw that Wolves kind of matchup zone be a good weapon against it. And like you said, the Wolves experience against this look, like if they can match up in the half court the way they want to match up, whether it's in the zone or like strategically having Rudy placed, like I think the Wolves are going to be good, but Phoenix is going to try and run like that. That's just my biggest thing in this.
The start of the 3rd quarter, that was clearly their adjustment coming out of the timeout. It was like coming out of the half was like run, like go, and they got a couple quick buckets. But the second you don't get a stop, you're back in the half court again. Oftentimes,
exactly. It's like the Wolves kind of got Ant going with those transition situations in game 1, or like kind of the semi transition, just basically where Phoenix couldn't be like set to half court, loaded up against him. And I think Phoenix tries to make Devin Booker do the same thing. Like, so he can kind of be attacking Jade McDaniels on the move, without the help there. Like, I think that if small ball is advantageous to Phoenix, it's because they run and they play off of that, and they kind of get, which isn't really deeply in their style of play like the way it might be for Oklahoma City. But if you can run and you can put pressure in there and you can get that drive and kick game, and then, hope it's one of those games where Royce O'Neal makes 3 or 4 threes, or Eric Gordon or something like that. I think if I'm Phoenix, I'm trying to push, get the Wolves out of a set situation and get the matchups just at least scrambled up, or just like somebody not on a guy, and have Booker attack one-on-one, or have Booker find shooters around him. I think that's like, if Phoenix does, were to win this game by like 15, I think it would be a lot of reacting to Booker and Beal kind of pressing the pace, and then also finding shooters around them. Like, if Phoenix wins the game, I think it's because Phoenix makes a bunch of threes with the role players kind of around the big three there. But that's why if you're the Wolves, it's keep doing what you've done all year, being intentional about getting back, and just know if you turn it over on offense, there you go. It's transition every time. Now you are in a disadvantaged situation as you were in game 82. Protect the ball, get back. And then I don't think small ball can hurt them as much as Phoenix kind of needs it to hurt them.
It is one of the interesting things is like, we really don't know like Grayson Allen's status, and they'll probably figure out more after practice today in Phoenix. But like, if they don't have him, like, they're just not deep enough. And he is such a key part of their offense with his shooting. Like, and Eric Gordon doesn't seem like the same shooter that he at one point was in his career. So like, that's a pretty big one in that like Phoenix has to definitely spread Minnesota out and attack and transition, all these things that Allen plays a key role in. Like, if you take that dynamic out of the lineup, I think Phoenix is in big trouble then. Like, I don't see
probably a Kogi, right? Like,
well, I mean, great. Yeah. Like into the rotation, probably.
Yeah. Not necessarily starting, but yeah.
I would assume like a Gordon would start, or like, otherwise you're really pushing Gordon, Royce O'Neal, everybody's minutes way up if you're not playing anybody else. Bol could play more with different lineup constructions, but like, without like, I don't see Phoenix winning any game in which Grayson Allen doesn't have a good game. I really don't, just because of what his good games kind of signify for what they were able to get to in like transition and just
not just against the Wolves, but all season he was really a front runner for them. Yeah,
and Phoenix's roster is interesting. Like, the Wolves, one of the best things about them is that like they can go like 12 different ways. You really can. Like, you can mix and match a lot of different ways because you have a lot of decent players. Like, Phoenix in this spot, like, I honestly think even a bad player who's just like a big 5 would help them in the non-Nurkic minutes sometimes. Like, it like just as a better option than like a Eubanks, to where like, okay, we're not gonna, this guy's not good, he's not skilled, they'll defend us certain ways, but at least we won't get beat up on the boards in this stretch by Gobert, where all of a sudden he had, in a 4-minute span, he had 6 rebounds and we had to foul him 3 times. Like, they don't have anybody. They don't even have like an option. Like, there's nobody down the roster. Like, I think DeAndre Jordan is terrible, but like, at least Denver has that option, as like this game, we might need DeAndre Jordan. Like, Phoenix, you go down, there's
like
not
Azubuike.
They don't have like they don't have a legitimate another 7-footer on the team. So like, that's where you're scrambling. Like, okay, we've got Eubanks, who's really more like a tall 4, unskilled. Like, you don't have anybody who can even like kind of match the size and physicality that like could go.
And that's why I think, again, that's why there's all these things pushing it to like go small. And like, then the Nurkic minutes have been good, but even in the
even he was like a -1 or a +1 the other game.
It's like, it hurts them that he can't shoot. Like, and that's at least what you can do in the small ball look, is you have 5 guys shooting too. So like, maybe you even lean into it further. Like, that helped Rudy be able to.
They did at least play Minnesota level. It was, it was like a dead even game when Nurkic was on the court, which kind of matches up with all season. They've been better with Nurkic on the court than not. I agree with you. Like, Nurkic, if he could shoot, they would give Minnesota even more problems with him out there on the court. But like, him versus him not is like a totally different team.
I just think that's like another that's what I would say to be scary about the smaller ball look, is just more 3-point shooting. Again, you can't just pass it around the perimeter. If you use that size,
clip that percentage. It was like, what the hell is this? And it worked out, but it was like, it was really good.
No, I mean, and that's because that's not like the team they've been all year. They've played a certain way the whole season that isn't, we talk about it a lot with the Wolves too. It's like, what does it look, what needs to happen when it gets stagnated? Ball movement, body movement. Like the Phoenix needs to do those, those same things, and that should be an advantage for them if it is against lineup combinations that are, multiple bigs out there for the Wolves. But the Wolves know that, that's the thing too. It's like they are probably thinking this is a likely adjustment here to, all right, we went to zone in this one. What else, what else do we have? How can we mix this up to show that different looks in case it gets, in case it gets rolling a little bit.
I definitely think like transition is Phoenix's number one option. And I think they'll pound that, like you said, but like we've just seen it time and time again now that like if you can't get stops and you can't control the glass, then you can't really get out in transition. Like it really is like transition is a product of doing other things well. And if you can't do the other things well, then it's hard to be like, and then just run. It's like, okay, right. 4 of us ran and then they got the board and put it back in. So now I guess we'll just run on the inbounds, which you can do a little bit, but like it's not just like an automatic thing you can turn off and on. And that's why I think that's a big reason as to why Minnesota's just been better in transition this year too, at times.
Well, and the thing too that the Wolves have is they have lineup combinations that they can go to counter it. And, I think of just Nikhil and Naz individually or simultaneously in the game together. And you wrote about that a little bit. It's just how good those two were together, Nikhil Alexander-Walker and Naz Reid, particularly when they were out there with Anthony Edwards in that third quarter, early fourth quarter run. That's a weapon because Nikhil and Naz are just good, but it's a weapon, a bigger weapon, I think, because it's a good counter to be able to throw at Phoenix. To your point, again, like as they started to run in the third quarter in game one, like, okay, we have this different look that we can go to. I think the Nikhil and Naz like two-headed sixth man monster thing is a huge, I mean, it's always a weapon for the Wolves, but in this series that the Phoenix's bench is looking bad. And, I think I kind of oversold Phoenix's bench as being able to do more in this series than it could. Like that is the Nikhil Naz pairing just feels like a massive win that the Wolves can get to in their mixed lineups.
I think Eric Gordon's one of those guys where you think of like who he was and it's kind of like an in theory player. And then you watch him play and it's like, that guy looks not like a good basketball player, which kind of makes like warps your view of their bench a little bit, I think. But yeah, Nikhil, I mean, you just can't say enough about like who he is as a player, like how good he is defensively. Like eye test and advanced numbers, like bear it out. And then how good he is offensively, like comfortable doing all things, knocking down shots with just confidently taking everything, like totally keeping the offense flowing and also punctuating possessions as well with success. Like it's just like who would you rather have, Nikhil or Kentavious Caldwell-Pope?
They're similar players. I mean, like I just like KCP just has such a long history of being a shooter,
Sure.
And
so you think maybe Nikhil's could fluctuate a little bit more?
Yeah, I do, but I'm just like, I don't know. We both watch a lot of the rest of the NBA too. Like it is watching Nikhil Alexander-Walker play defense is like a unique thing. Yeah, it's exhausting to watch. Yeah. It is like there is, and I none of this to take away from KCP, but just like so few players try that hard. It's just like it's kind of
KCP is just like sound. KCP is like he's doing exactly
what he
read the scouting report.
Yeah,
so he's a great player. Clearly read the scouting report. Is very sound. Is doing exactly what he's supposed to do. He's feeding you into where you're supposed to go on the court. Like Nikhil is like, I'm right here, like the whole time, where you're just like, get off me, and it's like nope. It's like you can't get away from him. Screens can't get away from him. Like he's going to be in your grill. He's going to be handsy. He's going to like swat down at the ball all the time. Like he had one of those, like Nurkic had the ball and like was just trying to do a dribble handoff to Booker and like just watching him like throw his hand in there and get it. It's like, Jesus. Like, and I swear he has multiples of those every game. He has I'm swiping the ball from you 40 feet away from the basket and it's leading to transition the other way. Like it is so relentless. It's like I said, and you said, it's exhausting to watch.
It really is. It's yeah. And we've always kind of talked about the Naz and Ant going back 2 or 3 years, like that's when they've gotten out and ran always, and Nikhil has kind of, stitched his way into fitting that really well, giving, Naz and Ant probably need a little bit of defensive help too. He provides that. I mean, yeah, I can't say enough good things about Nikhil Alexander-Walker and how important I think he is for the series. Also, like, I remember when Cat got back, it started being like all Nikhil at backup point guard, like game 81 and game 82. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like Jordan McLaughlin and Monte Morris have, been really helpful for the last couple of weeks. I was just surprised by how many minutes Mike Conley, Monte Morris, or Jordan McLaughlin weren't in the games at the end of the season, even kind of like before Cat came back. And I think that was a really good move by Finch. Like it kind of was like, hey, we need to get Nikhil on the floor here as much as possible. And like, is Monte maybe a better pure point guard than Nikhil is? Yeah. But like, if Nikhil can do enough in the quote unquote point guard role, where Ant's obviously initiating a lot of those times too, but where there's not another point guard on the floor, that's how you boost those minutes there. And I think that an interesting thing here in game 2, if we don't know on Kyle Anderson for sure yet, but if Kyle Anderson is back, how much does that cut into the Nikhil minutes? Like, I think there's an interesting ripple effect of Kyle returning.
Yeah, Monte played 9 minutes, and maybe were any of those at the very end either? I don't know.
No, it was just start of the
straight 9.
Start of the second 5 minutes.
As soon as Kyle went out, yep,
Mm-hmm.
It was just Kyle's sub. Like Kyle left the court, Monte came in. Like, so he was not going to play, and then Kyle got hurt, so Monte played. So you could give Kyle those 9 minutes, but he's probably getting at least a few of Nikhil's too. I agree. So that is interesting. The thing with like, you can easily,
like, doesn't Nikhil play 29? Like, you got to kind of he's got to be.
I've always been a Nikhil's played like 30-minute guy, like since last year's playoffs. Like I was every time in like training camp when I was mapping out minutes, I was like, well, Nikhil's playing at least 28, and it didn't work out that way, obviously, but that's where he always would have been, like in my mind. And in the playoffs, I think it should be higher. Like if he played 32, I'd be like, yeah, that's right. I don't know, like more.
It's just hard to get to him.
Because I agree.
Naz too. Like, how many minutes did Naz played? Wait, I'm on the fourth quarter here. That's not right. What did Naz played? 19 minutes.
Yeah.
Like,
an assistant coach told me once, they're like, just know there are 240 minutes and map it out yourself and figure out how you're going to get to these minute loads for guys, and
this is with Carl playing less too. Like,
yep. Right. Like, yeah. What happens when he gets to Denver, whose minutes get cut down? Like if in that theoretical series, and then Carl is there and he's probably playing 35, and Naz, you think you need more size? And
that might be a no Kyle Anderson series.
Sure, right, but they oftentimes like him as the backup on no Jokic when Cat's out of the game. So let's just start breaking that down. All right, Denver versus but Nikhil, like in those backup point guard minutes, I especially agree with it with Ant, the way they're guarding Ant, because they load up on him so much that it is so easy to just make that one pass and get the offense going. That you really don't need anybody to get you into any stuff. As long as Ant is going to be like, all right, screen, okay, hard hedge, let's get out the ball, and now we're in movement. Like that happens in one guaranteed action that you can facilitate every single time. And even as Finch was never like the biggest pick and roll guy, like it's not even running a pick and roll. It's really not. It's just like, all right, we got the 2 on. Now let's go and let's
start moving 4 on 3
with our catch and shoot players and like Naz and NAW. It's very easy to get that going. And it's very easy to repeat it time and time again with some of your better decision makers than having the ball.
Like, I not to totally separate it from Nikhil and Naz minutes, but like, do you think Kyle Anderson, 1, will, or 2, needs to play his normal like 18 to 20 minutes?
I don't think he needs to.
But you think he will?
Well, I could see not tonight being like, if he plays the best,
Tuesday,
we don't want to push it too hard. Oh yeah, Tuesday. There's another day. We don't want to push it too hard, like, we'll bring him back in a smaller dose. I don't see them not playing Kyle if he's if he's available. I could see them being like, well, are you not at 100? Like, are you at 85? Like, let's just see how tonight goes without you, and then you come back in Phoenix at 100. We have 2 more days off after this. Blah blah blah.
Did you see the play where like how he is? Normally you get a hip pointer from falling on the floor.
Yeah,
but
he got
like
it from a leg kick.
A knee. It was it was Beal's knee directly to his hip. Like,
it made sense then when, like, as I watched it back, I was like, oh yeah, that's when Beal was grabbing at his knee and Kyle's grabbing at his hip. Like that looks painful for both bones right there. Like.
Yeah, and he was we saw him in the hallway afterwards.
A little gimpy, but like,
but like, yeah, not to the point where you're
not
like that guy's for sure
yeah,
missing
just
the.
like this a little sore. Like I just bruised this. Basically, is the way he was walking.
Yeah. So but I think that's well put. Like, have a real conversation with him about like what percentage are you at? Play your
if you
first
can't-
shift, come back to
Yeah.
Micah on the bench and be like, I said I was 85, but I'm actually 65. You know, like, and you just gotta be honest with that, because we've also seen, Kyle's been a helpful player, and I think when fully healthy in this series could be a helpful player. But we've also seen way too many times this season when Kyle Anderson is not a helpful player, the bottom dropping out of the offense. He's also kind of like low-key a high turnover player too, and I think that's really important, is just as much ball control as possible in this. Obviously, he's a good playmaker, but everyone knows what we're talking about. That happens there too. So I'm interested to see how Finch approaches that, and it's probably part of the calculation of the Durant matchup in this too. Like, I don't know. I go to, they really tried to put McDaniels on Durant more in the second half, and I don't think. I know everyone's like, it's cool if like KD gets his 30, whatever, and then you contain the other guys, but I don't think that's going to be the Wolves mentality. I don't think, and I kind of agree with it. Like, I think you need to make it tougher on Kevin Durant, and part of the case for Kyle Anderson playing is being able to put him on KD more often. So I think his minutes are tied to the importance of the KD matchup. However, people want to look at that.
How do you think Phoenix will go about outside of transition trying to establish more ball movement? Because like it did get so sticky, like, and I know you said like you wouldn't, KD's points are points either way. I mean, that makes sense, but it did turn into such isolation basketball. And I'm just reading stuff about Phoenix throughout the year. They've been fighting that. Like, we don't want that, like, and after they beat the Wolves on Sunday last week, they were like, yeah, okay, that's what we want as far as offense, like moving the ball. Like, they don't want to be the Clippers. But when you start to matchup hunt, it often does turn into like what the Wolves would do when they would face a switching defense, and they would just size up somebody who is a theoretical mismatch and go at it. And it's just not good offense, even if it goes in, because everybody's just standing and watching. In what ways do you think Phoenix will try to generate more movement? Even in those situations where it's like, okay, we have KD on a matchup here, but like, how do we get something else?
I think it's multiple screen actions. Like, I think you'll see a lot more of like the double drag.
They did that for Booker. It didn't generate very much, but
like during the season, that's a good way. And it's just always, that's an important Grayson Allen being involved part of that too. Cause if you can use him as one of the, like, just those little like peel ghost screen sort of things where you need to care every single time Devin Booker's coming off of a screen. And like, so the big or whatever, whoever's guarding Grayson Allen, like, needs to care about being there. Otherwise, Booker's just going to pull up. But then if Allen's kind of slipping out of that, then the big's got to scramble over to that. Okay, here's another screen coming. Like, I would try to add confusion and make the Wolves defense less sharp by doing multiple screens high. I think what we saw them do is, like, when Rudy is up, trying to take it away, they're going to run that Spain, that back screen on him sort of thing, which is, that is the counter to, pressing up and coverage up, up to the level, is setting that back screen there, taking Rudy, away from the rim, those sort of things. I mean, I don't know what like the second spectrum total of screens is, but from game one, but I would bet it's like, 1.5x that in game two. You got to make, like, that's the disadvantage of the Wolves, is like, if you get enough switches, we saw it all season, cross matches, anything where like the further you can get the Wolves away from lining up the way they want to, that I think that's how you hurt them most. And I would do that with ball screen action.
It did surprise me, like, talking about the Spain pick and rolls to like take advantage of Rudy up. Like, I think maybe just the times he were in my head more, because as I watched the game back, like, he still dropped. It wasn't like as exaggerated, maybe like there wasn't that much room there, but like he still definitely wasn't a drop. And as much as anything, it really was like Jada and Nikhil like doing a really nice job, like staying on Booker's hip pocket, so that there just wasn't much room to operate even in the mid range anyway, because they were still there. Like, but Booker, I mean, Gobert did drop more than I thought. Like the switches and whatnot really came on like Cat, KD, switches. Like Gobert would switch anytime like KD was in
off ball, like on the sides and that sort of thing.
Yeah. It wasn't like he was like way out, hedging off anything like that. Like, which maybe was in my head. He definitely did drop more than I thought. It just wasn't like the deepest drops, I guess.
Yeah, it was like interesting. I think why it worked, right, is it's easy to picture and tell the story of like, oh, the bigs dropping too deep against a team that has guys that can come in and pull all the time. But like, I thought Rudy did such a great job, like even in the zone kind of look at function like that, of looking at where they're setting the screen. Like, because Phoenix started setting it higher and higher to try and get Booker downhill.
Yeah,
like, just get Jaden
near
off
half
of him.
court sometimes. I mean,
and so if you're Rudy, like, you don't need to be to the 3-point arc there. You need to be up once he gets to you. And I thought Rudy did a great job of that. Jaden's like sneaky, really good at going under screens, which, we talk about Nickeil. He's like the best at going over them. Jaden is, I think with so many reps of, being an on-ball defender has a really good feel for like, okay, this is coming up higher now. I can get under Eubanks or Nurkic here and still get back to like on Booker's hip, like by the time that he would pull up.
And that's where his length is, again, another major advantage, where you can get under and get to a spot where you can still very much contest the shot with your length.
And it's the like, would have Jaden McDaniels made the difference in the Denver series because he would have been able to guard Jamal Murray? And we like obviously all praise the job Nickeil did on him, but like I think Jaden McDaniels would have done an even better job on Jamal Murray in the playoffs last year, but just because he was longer and taller. There's like, he just has that weapon physically that Nickeil doesn't have, and that's why it's such a weapon to have both of them out there.
Yeah, and I think that's a big thing too, is like Jaden presents a little bit different look that somebody has to adjust to, so you're not getting comfortable with the same guy again and again. And like you saw Nickeil by the fourth quarters, like if Murray was going off in the fourth quarters of those games, it's like Nickeil looked like he was dead. Like because he'd been doing it for 30 minutes without really anybody else, and Nickeil was playing like 44 minutes in these games, and like just going around 100 ball screens. Like we talked to him after the game 5, and he's like, "I'm exhausted." Like when the series was finally over, it's like just not having to do it all game. Sometimes like when Nikhil's out there in the 3 guards, there are times where he's like on Grayson Allen. Like in certain lineups, it's like this is a breather for him. He's in the game, and it's a breather.
Like breather guarded the number 1 shooter in the league.
Right.
But like,
right, because he's not having to go navigate multiple drag screens anymore. Like so it's being able to just have both for the sake of having both and mixing and matching and keeping both of them from just like tiring out. They don't have to play 44 minutes because they have each other out there. They don't have to take the primary matchup for all the minutes because they have each other out there. And you can feed different looks there. So many advantages to having both versus just one, where it's not just like, well, now this guy just takes that guy's minutes.
Well, and maybe to the Nickeil point, we're like, got to play 30. Like maybe it is okay if he plays 24, 25, just to keep him fresh. For
full throttle Nickeil for every one of those minutes.
Right. And because you're going to, again, like what's going to happen, particularly with like, and if Mike Conley plays better in this game than in game 2, he's going to play more minutes, like there's just like,
this is another series where like,
play more.
This like for Cat, this is not really a Cat series. I would say Phoenix isn't really a Mike series either. Like he'll play and like and he'll play better. Like he'll shoot the ball better as much as anything else in other games than he did here in game 1. I didn't mind his looks, they just didn't go. He'll have a game where he scores 15 points or whatever, but like, it still just isn't like his ideal matchup because of all the size Phoenix has. Certainly he can guard Grayson Allen, but that's about it as like a good Mike matchup.
I thought he was pressing a little bit early. I think he was just like wanted to make sure that the first quarter offense was getting some shots off, and he took some bad ones because of that. But like, if there's a player on the Wolves to be confident in bouncing back, at least from a mental standpoint, I mean, Mike Conley would be the number 1 there. But to your point, like this is a tough matchup, just like Boston was when the Wolves had to play them, because Mike Conley is fighting up at least a weight class, in kind of no matter who he's guarding. Anything else? Last miscellaneous thing? I miss anything we want to hit before?
No, I just want the YouTube thing to read previewing the Denver series. Please. I mean,
I shouldn't have led. I shouldn't have led with what I led with. My point was this. I'm gonna say it one more time. So I think the Wolves get back up to like now have like a 60-70% chance of winning the series, right?
Yeah.
And then whenever they play Denver, we kind of
next
knew.
round.
Yes, but all season, right? You were like, all right, Denver's gonna be favored in that, but like by less than they would be favored against anybody else.
Yeah.
And
plus 170.
Sure.
Whatever, like Denver be like minus 200, I think, to start the series.
That's
just from perception. Yeah.
Yes, of like they're back at the place where I thought they would be entering the playoffs, which was having a good chance of being the favorites in their first round matchup, being the favorites against their next non-Denver matchup, which I think they even would be, probably even against Oklahoma City. Obviously, this is going out of order. And then with Denver, as close to a coin flip as you can get. And when I was thinking that way, I was thinking of the Wolves as being in the mix to get to the finals. And if that was logical thinking then, I think that translates to now. It's still 60-40, 70-30. Like you got to do a lot right to take care of this. Even just Phoenix. But I put them in the mix because when I think about it in the bigger scheme of things, they have the best chance against Denver in the West. And that in and of itself, I think kind of puts them in the mix in the West. That's what I was trying to say. Should not have led the podcast with that.
Yeah. I just say like my final thought on this is like heading into game 2, like I mentioned before, like it's all about mentality for Minnesota. And I think like if they don't bring the same effort, that's when you kind of get in trouble, because that is when like, okay, maybe Phoenix doesn't blow your doors off, but now all of a sudden, like there's 2 minutes left and it's a close game. And like, I know Phoenix hasn't been great in the clutch, but Minnesota hasn't been either. And things get tight and things get wacky and you don't know what happens. And like, you just don't want this series to all of a sudden be like, after game 1, you feel like you're the better team and you should win it. And if you bring a certain effort, you probably will. And now it's 1-1. And guess what? One of the games in Phoenix is probably going to shoot the lights out. So now like at best case, it's 2-2. Like, so just like, I think it's all about keeping the same desperation and taking care of your business when it's most advantageous to do so. So you don't find yourself in a fluky situation where like, now it all rides on game 5, making sure you don't go to Phoenix down 3-2. Like I trust Minnesota in like a game 7 or something like that to bring that desperation where they're really tough to beat. But you can also tighten up and make dumb mistakes in those situations too. So like, don't put yourself in too many situations where it's like, you need it now. When you have an advantage, do whatever you can to keep it. I think that's really important. We'll see how they come out, even in like the first quarter on Tuesday.
No, I think that's it. It's like, even if game 1 was that 10 out of 10 desperation, if you get an 8 out of 10 or whatever, like that hurts your odds. But there's other levers too that I think can push it up. And that's what we talked about before. Is like Cat doing a little bit more, Mike having a better game, not letting their adjustments of maybe going smaller with KD at the 5 being able to hurt you. Like, I don't think the Wolves need to play like a 10 out of 10 effort and defensive game every single game. Obviously, the more often they do, the more likely they are to win. I just think like to beat Phoenix now, I'm not sure that's a requirement. And I maybe thought it, does that make sense? Like I maybe thought it would be a requirement.
Yeah, you think it might not take their best game. I just think for me where I'm at, like the more often they can beat teams by 20, the better, because we still don't know how their clutch time looks in that situation. You know, like a 4-point game with 5 minutes left where you could be like, the Wolves have outplayed Phoenix. But by the time you get into that spot, how many times this year were we like, and then they booted it away late? And who knows if it'd be different this time. Like I said, Phoenix hasn't been like the most inspirational clutch team this year either. But you just don't want to put yourself in those spots because it's not something, if they have one weakness, that's where it is. So avoid those games at all costs. Eventually you'll have to win them, but I think I do whatever I can to avoid those situations.
That would be such a confidence builder for the Wolves if it is a close game and they pull it off in the fourth quarter.
Sure.
Like, execute down the stretch. Again, now we're doing it, but there's like that possibility exists. If that happens out of game 2, then you're feeling really good about it. And if Denver preview.
If the opposite happens, then Phoenix is like, all we got to do is keep it close with these guys, you know? And then they get confidence in that of like, we just got to be within 10, you know, with 5 minutes to play or whatever. So like but that's where I'm Minnesota. I wanted to come out in game 2 the same way I did in game 1 and just totally like suck the life out of Phoenix, where everybody leaves Target Center on Tuesday being like, this series is no question over.
Yep. That's I'm excited for it. It'll be interesting to see the theoretical adjustments we have in our head versus what actually plays out, because those things never seem to truly line up. But I'm looking forward to it. Appreciate you doing it, Jace. And I'll see you at practice in a little bit.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, man.
Yeah. Next up, we are going to do an episode on Wednesday. I think that will be me and Britt after the game on Tuesday. There won't be a Tuesday morning pod. We'll keep rolling with this. Talk about whatever game 2, whatever comes out of game 2. You can read Jace at the Pioneer Press until then, and you can follow him on Twitter at Jace Frederick until Wednesday morning with Britt Robson. That will be a morning pod. We're not going to do it at night. Until then, he's Jace. I'm Dane. Peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hard so you can find me in the crowd, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down, yeah.